So first off, I want to just say thanks to Aaron Nelson. I watched your video last night and I just was inspired. The other night I couldn't sleep and for like 4 hours, and I just had these thoughts about these videos that I wanted to share about, and this is the first of those. And I wanted to share about my story. And anytime you talk about your own life, it's vulnerability. It takes vulnerability. It's not easy to do. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. So, you know, my life really dramatically changed at the age of 16, and I didn't grow up in a Christian home per se, and namely, I didn't go to church. I wasn't involved with any ministry. I wasn't reading the Word. I didn't do any of that. So my mom encouraged me to go to this Christian concert it was at Risen King, when they were at the old campus, now Bethel's campus, Twin View campus. And I didn't want to go. I didn't want anything to do with Christianity. In fact, I was experimenting a little bit. I was drinking a little bit with my friends and smoking weed a little bit, and I'm not even sure if my parents know that, but that's the truth. And I was just hanging out with kind of a rough crowd, and deep inside I knew that it was wrong. And then you get into hiding it, and you get into shame and all of that. But I ended up saying yes to going to this concert, and I found that the whole time I was there with a friend. I was just judging these Christians. They're raising their hands, and I just didn't get it. Like I was so disconnected, and I was very quick to judge, and I didn't really investigate it all. I just made a judgment about what they believed and how they were responding to what seemed like an emotional, experience that they were having. And so, that was, I go, and, they get to the end of it, and they're doing sort of a, hey, there's the Spirit of God is moving, and we're sensing that there's people here that have never really given their life to Him. And I'm sitting on the side of the stage, and all of a sudden the words that this musician, the lead singer, was sharing just started speaking to me. And I realized that he was speaking truth, and I had never heard an explanation of a relationship with God that way. And I ended up getting up from the stage, even though my heart was telling me, something was telling me no, and like, you look like a fool, and all this stuff. And I was in this moment, I was having this battle. But I got up, and I prayed, and I asked Christ to be a part of my life, and that I would surrender my life to Him, and I wanted to get to know Him. I wanted the joy that I could see in the people, and the freedom that I could see in the people that had already made that sort of commitment, and they had something that I didn't have, and I wanted it. And if this was the starting point, then I was going to go ahead and trust that this prayer was going to begin a change in my life. And I was battling a little bit of depression and things like that, and I just didn't know what I wanted. I was lost. I had no mentors. I wasn't a part of any sports teams at the time, so I didn't have anybody to look up to, and my friends were getting information from wherever they were. So I just was being fed kind of garbage. And I remember getting back in the car. The cool thing about that story was I didn't realize it, but my mom had actually prayed, God, I just prayed that Robin gets it. She prayed that when I was not in the car. And I get back in, and the first words out of my mouth were like, Mom, I get it. Like, something happened, and like, God did something in my heart. And she began to weep, and it was just a powerful moment for my mom and I. And I remember looking out the window on the way home saying, God, if this is really you, if this is what relationship looks like, I feel like the weight of the world's been taken off of my shoulders, and I've been forgiven, and I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've been carrying those mistakes around. Like, I'll serve you. And that began to the point that I share this today, just a radical transformation where God has continued to change the way I think about people, and change the way that I think about relationships, and change the way that I look at how I do business and how I work, and how I care and how I show generosity, and things that were never on my radar before. I was actually living pretty selfishly before, and still have selfish moments, but the reality is God began a good work in me in that day, and He's continued it ever since. And I want to encourage anybody that watches this, maybe part of the story you can resonate with. Maybe you've kind of gone off and done your own thing for a little while. I just want to encourage you that your mess isn't too big for God to handle. You haven't missed, you haven't missed out if you've tried, the whole church thing or whatever. I just want to boldly say, like, don't give up and give God another chance, because I've had moments where I didn't sense that I was hearing from Him. I've had moments where I felt like He wasn't close, and that was difficult. How do you wade through that and really rely purely on faith in those moments when you don't sense the closeness of His hand on a situation, or you pray for things and you don't get the answer you want. And I challenge that and say, if God were to give me all the things that I've actually prayed for, I don't know if my life would be better off. I'd probably be more miserable. And discerning the fact that He answers the appropriate prayers at the appropriate time, because He knows actually what's best for me. So I wanted just for you to think back. Maybe you haven't had that experience with God. Maybe you haven't had a moment where you felt the weight of the world off your shoulders and acknowledged Jesus is who He says He is. And I just challenge you to journey with Him. Get quiet, ask Him to reveal Himself to you, and I guarantee you He will. And there's a verse in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7, that's in the New Testament. It says, ask, seek, and knock, and the door will be open. That's the simplified version of that. Meaning, if we come to God and we humble ourselves and we, spend time seeking Him and spend time asking to get to know Him, He's gracious and He will reveal truth of who He really is, and His plan for you, and His purposes for you. So be encouraged. Again, I'm stepping out. I think this is probably be the first of a couple of videos, and I want to again thank Aaron for sharing about boldness and vulnerability, and this is a result. This is in part a result of that. So thank you so much, and blessings. Take care.